What is your criteria or metric for determining if a pen is over or underpriced? It seems that personal preferences play a large role for people. Yeah, that is absolutely the case. It's really pretty much all a matter of personal preference. Well, yes and no. I think, for anybody that's in any type of industry where there's, you're determining prices for things based on comparables, that's really the most important thing. Like, I have a real estate background. When I graduated, my degree was in property management, and I got my real estate license right out of school. And that was basically the thing that you use to determine the price, because it depended on your local market, it depended on all these different factors, size of the house, and blah, blah, blah. So you kind of input all this stuff, and then you look at what is comparable, what is sold in the last 6 months, what is, in the same area, and that kind of stuff. And that's really what you use to set your price. What's the supply and demand? And that's just kind of a larger economic kind of question that you can ask about any given product. It's not just pens, but, it could really be for anything. So I think that probably more than anything determines whether something is under or overpriced, is how is it priced compared to other things that have similar features to it, right? So when you have pens that are less expensive, there's probably going to be a lot more other comparable products to it. So it's going to be really easy to say whether something is under or overpriced. When you get to more kind of limited edition things, you get special materials, you get a certain artist that might work on it, or artist or designer that might work on it, or has a certain theme to it that just not a lot of other things. You might get something that has some kind of licensed aspect to it. Think of like the monograph of Game of Thrones, or like some of the Star Wars stuff you've seen from like Schaefer Cross or whatever. That can really make it difficult to determine what is comparable. So there's a lot of different factors, and really that's why it's very subjective, and you can't just say, oh, that pen is or is not under or overpriced. You can say, well, I feel that it is. I think if you asked most people who aren't really into fountain pens, pretty much all fountain pens are overpriced for them, right? Because most people are used to paying, $2 for a 20-pack of Bic Crystal pens or something like that at Walmart or Target or something, and they look at a Metropolitan for $15, and they think you're completely insane for spending that much on one pen. And then you get into the hobby, and you're like, well, $15 is actually a pretty good deal. If you really get into it, you can get just completely like unbelievable numbers for what most people would consider to be, overpriced for a pen. So it really, again, it's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter of comparables and things like that. So I think that's a huge factor. And then, of course, like anything else, emotions can play a big part into it. Anytime you have something that's limited in nature, that always tends to make something be a little bit more valuable, especially if it has some color aspect to it, or some material that's just not widely available, or something like that. That can play on, if you love the color blue, for example, for me, I'm usually going to lean towards getting something blue. I might find a little more value in something that's blue, like my blue coffee mug. Like if my blue coffee mug was $2 more than a silver one, I would probably pay $2 more to get a blue one, and that's just a purely emotional decision. Has nothing to do with the actual value of a certain thing. Again, it's all supply and demand. So, the fountain pen market in general is a fairly niche kind of market, and so I think that it's gonna change a lot depending on which brands you're talking about and how many true comparables there are out there. But emotion is going to play a huge aspect to it. Well, that's definitely worth mentioning. But either way, really interesting question, and I think that it's always up for debate as to how fairly something is priced or not.